All right, welcome back to the channel. Today we've got something a little different. I'm going to be working on a Freightliner M2. This is an '07, and it's a dump, or this is a garbage truck, and it has a no start condition. So the customer thinks maybe the starter. I do have a new starter with me, and I'm just going to troubleshoot and verify that the starter is bad on this thing. So it has the Cummins ISB 6.7 liter engine in it. And yeah, we'll get to troubleshooting and verifying the concern. All right, so here's the mileage on this unit, 73,000. I'm gonna go ahead and turn the key on. There are gonna be some buzzers, so hopefully it's not too bad. And we'll wait for the intake heater light to go out. And then we'll try cranking. All right, and we get nothing. So I do hear some clicking, maybe a relay or something. And so next I'm going to check right at the starter to see if we're getting that signal at the starter solenoid. All right, so I got my power probe on the battery and ground connection on the starter itself, and the power probe is not powering up. So I'm thinking I'm not getting power here or ground at the starter. I had to try a different ground bolt to see if the frame or other components were grounded, and still no power to the starter. So I'm going to go ahead and next check the battery connections. All right, so here's our ground cable. A quick check on those. Those seem good. And then back here, see if I can show you these cable connections. They seem okay. Nothing seems loose there as far as the threads go. And it looks like we've got a cable that's not even connected. So this cable here, not even connected. And when I connect that to the positive, the power probe comes on. All right, so there's a problem with that. So I don't know if the customer just replaced these batteries. They look pretty new. And maybe that just got missed. Just want to double check these. So the whole assembly here moves quite a bit, but nothing really seems loose on here. So we got several studs, battery connection studs there. But all that seems okay. So I'm going to go ahead and grab, I think that's probably going to be a 9/16. So I'll grab a 9/16 and put that back on this stud here and recheck. All right, so this isn't going to be a great shot for you, but I'm going to do my best here. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the ground side of the battery. That way, if I accidentally touch something back there on the positive side, it doesn't short out against the wrench. All right, so ground side is off. I'll loosen this stud on the battery here. Just looking to see how much corrosion there is, if I need to clean up the terminal, but it looks okay. All right, so that's connected. Now I'll go ahead and hook the ground back up. My power probe should power up. It does. All right, so that connection has been made. Again, I don't know how well you can really see, but I put it on the stud here. You can barely see it. But let's go ahead and try to start it now, see what happens. Wait for the intake heater. It was a cold morning today. It was about 35 degrees. So definitely want to wait for that grid heater to cycle. All right, looks like that was it. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect my power probe. There are a couple other concerns. that I'll take a look at here momentarily. All right, so the next concern on this one is the brake light. The customer says that the brake light doesn't go out, and when they're driving down the road, it's beeping at them, and when they come to a stop, it stops beeping. So let me go ahead and release the brake. So I've got air pressure built back up. So I'll apply the service brake, and I do have an air leak. I don't know if you can hear that or not, but it sounds pretty significant. You watch the gauge move pretty quickly. So when I release the spring brake, the brake light doesn't go out. So that would indicate to me that there is a pressure switch failure. All right, so just doing a quick Google search. It says that the switches are here. So this is a cross member kind of above the rear axle. That's the rear axle there. And this is where the brake light switches are. They're off of this module. And so these two are teed together, which may lead me to believe that it's one of these connectors here that is for the park brake switch. So I do want to confirm that that's what I'm looking at. So here are brake lines on the right here. We do have, so this is the black wire coming from the back, or black tube. And then on the bottom here is the black one coming from the front, which I'm assuming is the park brake spring release. So if we follow that black one, it's going to come into the spring release valve, which is this one. And so it comes in, and then it's connected to a T. Let me show you. So it appears to be coming in through this line here, and then it just has a T going back out. And so I believe that T is what comes over to the manifold that we were just looking at. And then the signal supply comes into the spring brake valve here. This is the spring release valve. And then we have our tubes that go to the brake chambers to release on either side. All right, so back here at the manifold, what I'm going to do is I'm going to unplug this and put a paper clip between the two terminals and see if I get any change on the cluster, and then do the same thing with this one. That'll kind of give us an idea of what we have going on here. Just a quick look at the connection terminals. Everything looks good. So we got something beeping on the dash when I unplug the second one. I did not like that. So could be that that is our signal for the park brake, and that this is for auxiliary circuits. So let's go see what we got on the dash. So I don't see anything. Let me turn the key on. All right, so the brake light went out. It's right here. So that went out. We do have a low air warning. So, yep. Let me turn the key off. All right, so it's angry that we don't have park brake signal, which is good. That tells us we're on the right track for that switch. And one other thing I'm going to do before I just tell the customer to replace this module is take the tube out and release the park brake and see if we get air pressure. All right, so it looked to me like we were getting pressure out of there. The air tanks are down to about 50 psi, 60 psi, so it's not a lot of pressure, but I did hear it. So we do have a good connection here. Just wanted to confirm that we didn't have a kinked line or something else, or an obstruction in the line that was preventing the switch from operating correctly. We're going to plug that back in, and then, like I said, we're going to let the customer know that this switch is failed, and to get that module. All right, so I'm going to check for that air pressure leak. So this is just a head prop. It works well for applying pressure to the service brake. So I usually just push it against the driver's seat, something like that. All right, so it's this T here that's leaking. Hopefully it's not cracked. It seems like it's leaking out of the end. If I pop that line out, or release pressure. So now we shouldn't have any pressure on these lines. Oh man, that is like the worst. This one I can't even get to push it in. I have to get a tool on that. I don't know if you can see how terrible that looks. That is one. That is quite the angle. Got a couple of tools here. So the idea is the wrench is going to put even pressure on that ferrule, or that fitting, and then the pliers will try to compress it a little bit more evenly. All right, so remove that line. And I don't see anything right off that would indicate a leak. It's actually cut straight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go below any of the marks. I'm going to cut it. And then same thing with this green one. So you don't want those, if there are impressions or marks in the tube, you don't want those to compromise your seal. Alright, so I'm going to fire it up, wait for that intake heater light to go out. So system is at pressure. I'm going to go ahead and put the hood prop back on the brake pedal. Something like that. I'm going to put the battery cover back on. All right, battery cover should be pretty straightforward. Just want to make sure it's under the lip in the back. That looks good. Releasing through diaphragm. That's what that would indicate. All right, so the customer does want me to determine what is needed here. Told them that it was most likely a brake chamber. And in the school bus world, it's recommended to replace, whenever you do anything relating to brakes, you do both sides, left and right side. So I said, it is a garbage truck. I get that. But in the school bus industry, this is the way, things are recommended to be completed. And so he said, yeah, we'll just do both spring brakes if that's what it is. So I am going to I want to confirm that it's not the SR7 or the SR spring release valve here that's leaking. I do want to confirm that it is a brake chamber. So by pulling both of these lines off of the spring release valve, and then applying the service brake, when I do that, if I get pressure out of these lines, that means the diaphragm inside of the spring brake is bad. And so that's what I'm looking to do here, is just confirm that it's that diaphragm, internal diaphragm, and that it's not this valve here leaking. So I'm going to go ahead and start up the truck. I'm going to start the truck, build up air pressure, and then I'll be back down once I apply service brake pressure. All right, so we got the brakes applied. So it is the spring brake valve. So the chambers do not have any pressure coming through them. So we've got something inside the spring brake valve that is allowing air to leak out through this line on both sides. So I don't know if you can hear that, but that's what we got going on. So it is that guy. All right, so there we have it. We have a leaking valve here, spring release valve. Should not be leaking that like that. I'm just going to put these on. The driver or the customer does need to use this truck to pick up some garbage. And so they want me to come back when they have parts to replace these components. All right, so I think that's it for today. All right, so I'm back out here working on this garbage truck for a school district. This is the park brake switch assembly. So I'm not sure what, here are the item numbers, but here's the information that's on this box. As we open it, this is for the additional module that gets put on. So this is the switch assembly, and so that extra bag of hardware has a seal that goes on this side, and then it has the metal clip that holds the switch that's to the left of this switch assembly. And so they just lock together using this metal clip here, and so they just kind of get stacked left to right. And then this has the new seal right here already there. So in the bag is the seal for this side, and then the clip for the module that connects to this. It'll make more sense when I go to replace it. And then the other thing we have is the spring brake valve. So it's the SR7 spring brake valve. I think the SR7 is standard on, well, SR7 is standard for school bus rear brakes, and SR is for spring release. So here's the valve. So this valve is what's used to release the parking brake on the rear axle. The nuts most likely will be seized on the studs on the other one. And so when I go to zip those off, it'll probably just pull the studs out of this housing, which is fine. I've got stud tools, the right tools. I can probably just use vice grips to hold the stud and then take the nut off because the nut will be reused. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with replacing these two assemblies. All right, so this is the valve we're going to be replacing here. All right, so in order to get the lock out, this cap plate has to come off because it holds the bottom of this metal clip in place. So I'm going to zip these guys out. Slide out. And this is the tab here that I was talking about being held captive by that plate. So now that this clip is out, this should just slide off. So here's what the green one looks like. It does have this extra port on it here. And the new one that I have does not have a fitting here in there, so I'll show you what that looks like. I don't think it needs to be transferred. I think that the switch I have is just more like this one here. I'm playing on my pinky where it has the two openings that aren't being used. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this in. Should be pretty quick and easy. So put the rubber seal back on there. I'll take the old seal out. So there's the old one. Should basically go like that. You should be able to slide this lock in. So the lock is seated all the way. Plug this in. The lock is seated. And now we can put this back on. So this is that bar that holds all of these in place and holds the lock in place so that it can't come out. And I'm going to go ahead and start these by hand. So the nut, it's just like a flange. It's threaded into the bracket there behind, so it's not something that will come out. It's not a nut. And these just need to be tightened up to not fall out going down the road. No torque or anything that's necessary for that. And then wipe the end of this tube off. Any debris from going in there. We didn't have any leaks here before, so I can hope for the best. I will be leak checking it with some soapy water. All right, so this is the spring release valve. You have to spray some brake clean in there, just get some of the debris out. That's preventing the ring from collapsing. I'm expecting the studs are going to come out. But if the nut comes off, even better. And so came out with that one. Yeah, there's quite a bit of dirt in there. So I'm going to go ahead and get some brake clean, clean out the locks there with brake clean, and then see if I can get those lines out. Got all those lines off. And just swap some fittings. So I'll do that back at the truck. All right, so let's do the easy one first. We're just popping the stud out. All right, piece of cake. Throw that back into here. Not that it matters much. Okay. Now we need to go ahead and take the rest of these fittings off. I believe those are going to be a 5/8. Hey, what do you know? Same thing. This is 5/8. One came off pretty easy. So hopefully I can clean these up. They should clean up pretty easily with some brake clean for that one. So impact, or not impact, Allen's. So that size. I'm going to use an impact to take these out, but I will not be using an impact to put it back in. Because it can split the housing. So not worth the risk, and I can just run it in by hand. That's probably going to be bigger. So those two were 5/16. This big one is 3/8. Plug should all be standard size. It shouldn't be metric at all. Alright, so that's in there super good. I'm going to use this to brace for removing these fittings. What a pain. Been useful to have a vise, for sure. I was going forward and then reverse, back and forth to try to get it to free up. Look at that. There's corrosion on the underside of that plug. Rusting, which should indicate excessive moisture. Perfect. It's stuck on there. No big deal. It's easier to clean when you got a handle. We are done with this valve. Put it in the box. Next, I'm going to go ahead and start cleaning up these threads. And I'm just trying to knock out some of the big stuff. And then I'll come back through with a wire brush. Some of this stuff can get pretty crusty, and so using a knife or something more solid than just a brush just helps speed things along. Get the big chunks out. Looks good. So this side's right up. Okay, and the other side's straight up. Thread sealant that I'm using, Loctite 565 thread sealant. And what I've heard from a Bendix class that I took is not to use the Teflon tape on any hair fittings because they found issues where the Teflon tape can get inside the valve and cause issues if it's installed incorrectly. And so they just recommend using liquid thread sealant. So that's what I've always used over the years. And I've tried different tubes. I've tried tubes, I've tried the paste that you have a brush and you brush it on. I think that this tube is the easiest to use generally. So what I do is I go around and I fill about 3 threads or so all the way around. And it doesn't really matter how uniform it looks as long as like at least 2 threads have sealant in them. Because as you put this in, it is going to push the sealant out, which is going to go around and then kind of get sucked in on the next thread that it comes across. So I'll do that plug, and there's plenty of excess. I typically don't wipe it off, I just leave it as is. I don't remember exactly how these need to be clocked, so I'm going to just get them started so that they're somewhat snug, and then I'll tighten them up when they're in there. I think they were both facing kind of forward, like that. If that's the right orientation, then I'll do one more. So yeah, I'll probably end up doing another full rotation and then just matching it where it was clocked correctly. All right, so that's it. The valve is pretty much back together. I've got the nut that was stuck on the stud. Cut that off. And I'm ready to go ahead and put this back into the truck. All right, so I'm going to start by hanging the valve. These are lock nuts, like a Stofa nut. You can tell by the angle at the top of the nut where it's almost a rounded edge, not a sharp edge. Alright, so now that it's in, I'm going to go ahead and put the quick disconnect lines in. So this one needs to rotate to back, and then this one needs to rotate to there. I'm going to do a full rotation on this one. Alright, that thread lids on. And now I'm going to do this one. That is on there. All right, so now we need to build up air and then leak check. All right, so I sprayed all the fittings, no bubbles, everything looks good. All the lines are good back here. It sounds like we've got a leak underneath the hood, so I'm going to take a look at what's going on there. Also check. Yeah. So this is what we're going to be watching for here, and the fittings there. In order to properly test this for leaks, I need to release the parking brake. Parking brake is released. We got a little bit of bubble there. Our valving here all looks good. I'm going to go ahead and build up air pressure again. We do have a leak here coming from the corner of the two halves of this new valve. That's pretty crazy. That's leaking. It's a very tiny, tiny leak. So we'll go ahead and call that good. But we have no leaks up here. So now we just need to identify that leak under the hood. All right, so it looks like we got a leak still on that small orange line there. All right, so that does it on the garbage truck. Sorry I didn't get a video of the parking brake indicator on the cluster working appropriately, but you'll just have to take my word for it that it is working without any issues the way it should. I finished leak checking everything. I think I got all that on video where we got all the leaks resolved. Actually, there weren't any leaks on any of the valves that I had that I was working on. There was a leak at the treadle valve unrelated to the work I did, and it looks like it just needs a new fitting, and I relayed that to the customer. We're going to worry about that another time. So that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and please don't forget to subscribe and share the content. Give me a like if you enjoy this sort of content. It is a little bit different since it's not a school bus. That's going to do it. Hope you guys take care.